Moving on now to team planting. This is a really interesting approach that I believe was conceived of by a farmer named John Hoffer at the farm that I worked at last season up at Wise Earth Farm in British Columbia, Canada. And the advantage is that it allows the operator to just completely focus on pulling the transplanter. If you've operated the Paperpot Transplanter, you know that it's kind of a dance between looking where you're going, but also looking back to always be conscious to make sure that those paper chains are going in correctly, that there wasn't a tear, or that the machine didn't get clogged. So you're trying to kind of focus on two things at once. So this just allows the operator to just look straight ahead and go. And then the second person is doing all the other things. They're monitoring that nothing is getting clogged, that the paper chains are going in the way they're supposed to. And they're also taking care of fetching trays when it's time to swap out, which is another thing that takes time if you're just flying solo. And something else that I observed was that it just boosted the morale in the crew. Most people, I would say, not all people, but most people enjoy working with someone else and doing kind of a team approach. And so if you're doing that, you're getting the job done twice as fast, and you're getting the whole planting done really fast. And you're also, working with another person and developing a rhythm and a flow. And it worked pretty well, at least for the crew at Wise Earth where I was. So we'll go deeper into the roles here. So person one, we refer to as the operator. Person two would be the feeder. The operator is in charge, like I said, of pulling the transplanter, and then the feeder does everything else, delivering the trays as they are needed, starting the chains, tearing the chains, and then also counting blanks as they're walking the row. I'll show more about this in the next slide here. So this is the general workflow. Operator positions the transplanter at the beginning of a row as they ordinarily would, even if they're working alone. But the feeder starts the chain, pulls it through the channel, and they hold it into the ground. So this eliminates the need for a landscape pin, which a lot of farmers do to hold it in place, or even kind of hand bury the beginning of the chain to make sure that it's held in position and there's enough tension to start the machine as you pull it through the bed. The feeder will also check for blanks and keep count as they're walking behind the operator. Blanks are referring to those cells where there might have been failed germination for whatever reason. Of course, the goal is to get as good or near perfect germination as you can, but the reality is there's often going to be some blanks. So as the feeder is walking behind the operator in the row, they're just keeping a mental tally of how many blanks, if any, they see. And then at the end of the row, they'll communicate that to the operator. And then they'll tear off the appropriate number of cells in the paper chain and just leave it at the end of that row. And then at the end of the whole planting, the operator and the feeder will work together and just very quickly go and fill in all those gaps and then move on to the next bed. It really works pretty well. I enjoy the process. Here's a nice aerial video at Wise Earth Farm with John Hoffer and a crew member, so you can get a nice visual here. So here you can see they're in the middle of a row. The feeder has delivered a new tray, and he is getting it all positioned and just pulling the beginning of the chain out. And then she takes it from there, pulls it through the channel, and holds it in place in the soil to be correctly spaced from where they left off. And then she walks behind and follows to the end of the bed, keeping count in her head if there's any blanks. Then she tears the chain, and all he has to do is lift it up, pivot, rotate that around, and get it positioned for the next row. And here's another thing that is really nice when you have a second person. You can see she kind of put her body weight into it and pushed forward on the machine. And what that was doing was getting that plow on the bottom of the machine deeper into the soil to create that furrow at the very beginning of the bed, which is often hard to do if you're working alone. You'll typically have to kind of dig it out with your hand a little bit and tuck in the chain. So there she teared the chain again, rotates it around. And there she goes again. You see how she pushed it in, and that just creates that nice deep furrow even at the beginning of the bed, so the chain just rests in the way that it's supposed to. And then following behind, counting blanks if there are any. And then you can see the tray is almost finished. So she would break off at that point and get the new tray. Ideally, you would want to be back to the operator right at the moment that that tray is empty, so there's no lag time, and you can keep your flow moving pretty quickly. Overall, works well. It's enjoyable. If you think your crew might enjoy it, if you think it might work for your context, then I would say definitely give it a shot.